everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So welcome to our webinar, and we are lucky to have Dr. Kennedy with us. So Larry has a unique interdisciplinary background in engineering and business, together with his practical experience as a nonprofit trustee and foundation executive. Larry started his career as a systems engineer position in Apollo spacecraft operations and flight crew training, where he first practiced quality management disciplines. He also was lucky to be mentored by Philip Crosby, the world-renowned quality management executive, and Larry partnered with him in reaching out to the nonprofit world. So Larry is the founder and CEO of the Quality Management Institute. It's an online individual and cohort learning with professional certification in systems engineering, clinical research, IT, and nonprofit leadership. So Larry now will cover with us the IT Quality Manager Scholarship and Certification. And I pass it to you, Larry, and thank you.
Well, thank you, Raed and Margaret. We appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with BCS and to reach out to folks in the name of quality and improvement and all the good things that we all think a lot about. Of course, I did a presentation on June 22nd, and I'm not going to repeat that entire presentation. You can pick up the recording, I'm sure, on the website of BCS. But I am going to start by taking a piece of that presentation to emphasize the nature of the course that you're going to take if you choose to submit an application, and you should be fortunate to make it through the review by Margaret and Raed, and I hope everyone does. This course is in two phases, and we like to say the course part is online, videos, practice exams, graded exams, and other things that I'll describe in a little more in detail later. And then you can come to the discussion group, which is optional. And so you can work your way through the training that's going to be offered at your own speed. You can be ahead of us or behind us in the discussion group. But what we do, we have a schedule that Raed will present to you, where we discuss what's coming up in the next module, and we review what you've just been exposed to in the previous module. And we have very, very vigorous discussions. I'll be there every time. I love them. I learn something every single time. You know, it's not just something you say, it's a truism in my experience. And I think you'll find that it's a tremendous addition to the academic style learning, which I think is also pretty practical. So that course will begin July 27th. And the actual online follow-up discussions will end about November 30th, somewhere in that range. And then we'll have several discussions after that, where we will share what we're doing in terms of our project demonstrating excellence, which I'll mention again in a few minutes, and discuss how we might improve them and so on and so forth. So you will find that personally and professionally, these discussions are a rich addition to the certification that we're offering. The training is about 24 hours of study and spread over about 2 to 3 hours a week. You can easily get through it in 6 or 8 weeks, something like that. We have practice exams on every module. There are about 850 practice exam questions, and there are also a graded exam for each module. There are a total of 450 graded exam questions, and so it's a very secure facility. And we've tried to make the value of the exam process a legitimate measure of competency and acquiring knowledge. And then also we'll be asking you to do a simple project demonstrating excellence, applying some of the tools that we teach, and some of these may not be new to you, but work process analysis allows us to get a snapshot into what you've learned and how you can apply it. And then we also ask you to submit a CV so that we're comfortable when the reviewers look at your PDE and your transcript that that we're offering a certification to someone who is an emerging professional in the industry, and you're building your future with our help. So that's basically the sort of nature of the course and the discussion group. But I'd like now to give you an overview of the ethos, the values that are driving this entire course offering. You know, quality is delivered by culture. You know, there are all kinds of processes that support quality management and all kinds of methods and things that we can learn and apply. But a quality culture delivers what a customer wants, needs, or expects, or as Philip Crosby said, what the requirements are. Conformance to requirements is the definition of quality. But it also, a quality culture also delivers reasonable expectations of feeling safe and secure. And with the emergence of advanced computing methodologies, AI, and large learning groups, safety and security is becoming more and more an issue. I'm very much involved with some AI groups that are applying their work in aerospace and automobile industries and places where individuals who are not professionally experienced might have some insecure feelings about letting machines make decisions for them or create a response on their behalf. So a perception of trust and reliability in the processes that we're managing and the promises that they either explicitly or implicitly make to a consumer, to someone who's going to be a user, are very important issues for us. More and more advertising and marketing, particularly in the area of advanced AI technologies and the various levels of application they have, and all of the different proprietary sort of black box modules that they knit together to do what needs to be done, doesn't create a larger sense of security. It usually adds to a sense of insecurity. So in each case, in any manner when you're trying to fulfill the promise or meet the need, it often gets back to people. The failure rates usually start and end around people's perceptions of what needs to be done, how well they're trained, how well they're supported, what is their value system and attitudes, and so on and so forth. So there's a large emphasis on that in our training system. Watts Humphrey is considered one of the fathers of quality in software development from Carnegie Mellon. He said this, and it was arguably the truth then. I'm not sure it's arguably the truth now, but he said one principal problem in educating software engineers is that they'll not use a method until they believe it works, and more importantly, that they will not believe the method will work until they see it for themselves. Well, I think that's good thinking. However, I now, in the current iterations of developers, I see a lot of blind acceptance of methodologies and this module and this way of approaching an analysis or what have you. And having spent a lot of time with experts around the world in agile development processes and what have you, I find that there are whole big blocks of opportunity for failure in the communications area, in the ethics area, in the follow-up and the procedures that an overseer might have a responsibility to ask a question that he or she doesn't feel comfortable asking, or doesn't feel comfortable making a statement, an evaluative statement that shows something less than a full appreciation of the work that was done. So there's a real push and pull in these areas. And when you study economics, you find that the most important thing about economics is not the numbers. It's a social science more than an empirical science. And it's why people do things. What goes on in this tug of war between what's the right thing to do and what's the wrong thing to do, and which way, how do I accomplish what I want to do? And so if you have no understanding of this very emotional, very personal, very social thing that's going on, and you think you can implement digital technologies just from numbers and just from hardened procedures, you're really not taking into full consideration everything you need to do. So it requires a systems approach to quality and a systems approach to life to really understand the kinds of things that need to be done. And systems thinking is simply an approach to problem solving that considers and evaluates facts and events as parts of an overall system. Our course emphasizes the tools of systems thinking, everything from the scientific method to work process analysis to root cause searches, things like that that are methods or tools for applying systems thinking so that you decrease the potential for solutions that fail and unintended consequences that are created by reacting to a small or specific part or an outcome or event in isolation instead of getting back from it and looking a little more broadly at the overall system. We call it looking through a straw. And when you look through a straw, bad things start to happen. You miss the intricacies and the complexities and all the interactive and determinant factors of the system that you otherwise would get if you took a systems approach and not just an individual event approach. Systems thinkers view the world and its people as interactive parts of a super system. So it's kind of getting outside of yourself, getting outside of the immediate event, the immediate error, the immediate objective, so on and so forth, and taking a broader look at where you are and what you're trying to accomplish. So we emphasize this and give you some practical applications through the course offerings. Super systems have to be supported by what we describe as intelligent systems. And an intelligent system is one where the people are the major asset. You know, a lot of the data aggregation that we do, and we present it in various formats, and people call it AI or they call it some other thing. We've got all kinds of new computing power up into quantum. And so data is very much available to us now in a way that it hadn't before. And I think that people begin to think when we make promises on our products to be able to do this or that, that they can, that we're trying to convince them that they can depend on this software or this particular process of presenting data to make good determinate decisions, things that determine the rise or fall or the failure or success of things. And these things were never meant to be, in many cases, the determinant factor in a process. They were supposed to be tools and augmentations for management who've taken responsibility to make better decisions. One of the things we talk about is the Gary Kasparov effect, where Kasparov, of course, went up against Big Blue, IBM's computer, and their engineers in the chess tournament. And of course, the first time out, Gary won, and quite easily, as a matter of fact. And so the engineers got together and studied all of his moves and updated his algorithm and sort of speeded up the way they could interact with the computer, and they beat Gary. And so Gary says, "Oh, I see your game." And so he says, "You know, I'm a better chess player than you are, and I think I'm an equally as good algorithm writer as you are, and I've got a computer too, so I'll up my game in the computing side." And guess what happened? The person who was using the data and making the determinant factors, who really had what we call vocational certainty in our course and in the real life applications we have in quality, prevailed. And that's the way it's supposed to be. So you'll hear through our course echoes of people like Philip Crosby and W. Edwards Deming and Joseph Juran. And these people have established sort of principled approaches to quality. And really what they're re-entering into our culture at their particular point in history was principles of management of people and advancements in that understanding of the management of people, and the understanding too of the requirements, whether it's manufacturing or service industries or what have you, that these things have to be integrated into a whole picture, that you can't be looking through a straw at just one part of it, but you have to understand the whole. They've written some tremendous books. They're in our list of suggested reading. Quality is Free by Crosby is the most well-known. Quality Without Tears is really my favorite. And out of the crisis with Deming, when you read these other documents, these other sources, you're going to find they're consistent with what we call orthodox quality. And when you go through our course, you're going to hear echoes of all of those things, because there's not a whole lot new to learn about the methods of quality management, whether it's quality assurance, putting good things into a process, or quality control, taking bad things out of a process, and all the various emphasis of that. One thing we've done at the Quality Management Institute is define the 8 attributes of a quality culture, which begins with individuals, of course. We've just had this adopted by the NCOSE Systems Engineering Handbook, the worldwide handbook, and they basically have acknowledged that what we did was take what Crosby and Deming did and leverage it up into a current need, and that is that the culture isn't getting the kinds of ethics and the kinds of operating values, the kind of professional and personal values that are needed to support a work culture. And they often enter the workforce without the skills and the knowledge technically that they should have. And they're expected to enter into the workforce and quickly adapt and move forward. I had an incident not long ago when I was teaching a class, and I almost said the company, but I'll back up and not say the company, but a bunch of engineers, systems and double E's and such. And one person in the room who was an electrical engineering graduate could not describe to me the theories that were necessary to understand to be effective in his work. And he said, I know I should know these things, but I don't. And I felt really sorry for the person because these are the kinds of things that you wonder how they, how they happen. But industry is more and more backfilling and providing remedial training and support for those kinds of things. Our 8 attributes are pretty simple, and you will study 8 modules with one of the attributes described, explained, with examples, with all kinds of viewpoints and perceptions that will help you get a deeper understanding of it. But let's just go through a couple of them here, and we'll leave this open for more questions later. But the number one module, the most important attribute that we talk about is called the 0 defects attitude. And we distinguish that from the 0 defects count, the target. The measure of quality is 0 defects, as Crosby said, and Deming agreed quite heartily. So that was all about counting defects and figuring out a way to get rid of them or prevent them from happening or reworking or so on and so forth. And it was part of the way that as these things were measured, that people were motivated to be more concerned with their outputs. Very often, when at the Quality College back in the 80s and 90s when I was there, the students, the learners, whether they were executives or operational folks, were there not so much that they were concerned about the effect of the product failure or the service failure on their constituency, on their customer, but on the bottom line financially. Well, that's an important consideration, but taking care of the expectations of the customer will also take care of the expectations financially. And so we think of the 0 defects being a heart attitude. Whether you really do care or not, whether it's in your heart to do the right thing and you're just trying to figure out how you can do the right thing, personally, professionally, in the setting that you have, and whether or not the corporation or the entity or the group that you're a part of will provide the environment and the resources you need to help you do that. So the 0 defects attitude, as it says on the screen, is a measure of our commitment to keep our promises and to initiate systems with the reliability goal of preventing even one defect from reaching our customers. In other words, we don't ever want to get to the point where we say, well, we've only made 5 mistakes this week, that's fine. We're never going to get to 0 defects. From time to time, a manufacturing production line will hit a 0 defects target for a few thousand repetitions or what have you, or a few months, but it's not sustainable. What is sustainable and what has been proven over and over again from studies and research is that if you're not pointing toward a 0 defects outcome, you'll continue to sort of incrementally go up and then incrementally come down in your targeting. And so it's very important to be pressing toward that goal and to have the heart that, hey, every time I take an action, whether it's in a product I'm developing or a service I'm providing, asking myself the question, is this the kind of decision I would be making or the way I would be executing my action if this product or service was going to my family, to my son or daughter or my dad or something like that, somebody personal? Would I be taking this as seriously or more seriously than I am right now? So that's kind of an insight into zero defects attitude. The second sort of pillar of our 8 attributes is the vocational certainty. And this is really a measure of our faithfulness to our career agenda. It's how disciplined you are in the skills and talents and acquired and earned confidence. You know, one of the biggest problems that we see in business in terms of wasted time, inefficiencies, morale, are meetings that go nowhere or don't accomplish anything or don't accomplish what they were supposed to, or sidetracked into arguments or so on and so forth. And very often this occurs because the people at the table don't have vocational certainty and aren't able to restrain themselves from trying to sound relevant when they really don't have the knowledge base, the experience, the insight, the practical ability to make a comment. But they feel like they need to make a comment, or they get off onto a tangent of some kind. And in an environment where vocational certainty is one of the important factors and values, is that it's self-restraint, it's self-governance. It's like, do I really need to be saying this? Can I really add value to this? Am I willing to recognize the strengths and the vocational certainty of my colleague over here as the one who should respond? It doesn't mean I have to be quiet. It means that I'm concentrating constantly and keeping my motivation not on what I want, but what's best for my customer, what's best for my colleagues, what's best for this process and the overall group that I'm a part of. Now, we also go into things like process quality, which is all about planning and budgeting activities, administrative consistency, which is about the focus you give, the attention you give to details. And often those details are being obviously presented to us by discussions with our customers or by things that we hear that we say, oh, that's interesting, but we don't take action on it. We don't capture the information and take action on it. So we go right through that. And the first part of our training is about building the culture first in yourself and where you have authority or influence. And then the second part of our training is more on the technology applications, the sort of systems engineering approach or the systems thinking approach. You could use any of those terms and it would apply pretty evenly. Where we talk about executive credibility, personal authenticity, ethical dependability, creating the culture and so on. But we also get into these techniques called work process analysis and other things that are familiar to you, but you might not have had a lot of practice with. So from there, we try to give you an insight into what effect the absence or the presence of these 8 attributes has on a work culture. And if it has that effect on the work culture, that directly relates to the outcomes, the processes, the defects or the conformances, to the satisfaction of the customer, to company morale, to profit, and so on and so forth. And most of the studies show that if you hit the quality target properly and you got your heart aligned and you got your vocational certainty and you got good processes, you'll find the right price point. You'll find the right average delivery time that it should be, and you can get it there. You can't get it there any quicker by just being fast. You've got to be effective. And so all of these attributes have direct effects on the ability to do your work, and it's based on the project complexity. The more complexity in a project, the more probability that you're going to have difficulties and failures and error rates and defects if these values aren't being held by the culture itself. It's something that many, many studies have proven over and over again. You can go to the qualitymanagementinstitute.com and you'll see a little tab on the front page where you can read some of the research. It's stunning how much is known about all of this. And lately, I've been studying the Gallup polls from the United States. That's a worldwide poll, and in Europe and Asia and the United States and South America, you can see the results regionally, but worldwide, there's an increasing number of disengagement by the individuals that are in the workforce. So we try to give you that viewpoint of what the value is and how to apply it. And I said, project complexity really does affect not only the values, but the implementation of just the fundamentals, like the fundamentals of quality, scientific method, systems thinking. It affects rigor and due diligence. And sometimes you'll find people just have lost the intensity required to bear down and find out what needs to be discovered. So the other thing that comes up a lot and is affected by these values is process documentation. I had a friend at IBM, and I can say this because he uses this slide, Bruce Douglas, he uses this slide publicly, and he gave me permission to use it. And they had a problem with one of their customers' systems, and they went in to discover what the process was and what the problem was in it. And because it wasn't very well documented, they had to kind of sort of reverse engineer the thing and work their way back down and retest all of these different points of decision. And what they found out was that if they had properly documented the process, that it would have taken them about 1 day to figure out what to do, and $30 in technical expense, $30. Instead, they spent about $1,300,000 in time and effort, and the same $30 or so of technical expense. So these kinds of things, people call it technical debt. It's actually and not just something we haven't done yet that we want to do. It's something we should have done. And we discovered when we put it out into the marketplace and the error rates start coming back. And these are things that as a consumer, I don't expect it to be that way. So we take the values and the skills that are taught in the curriculum, and we present them as an overall culture. And you can see from this diagram that they're organizational values, personal values, and professional values. Those are the 8 attributes we were talking about. And on the right-hand side are the skills, those things that were on that slide. And that slide pack is available to you from BCS, so you can probably download it. Anyway, these skills reciprocate. They have to be integrated. They have to be part of the culture. And if you have skills, but you don't have the values, you don't get a reliable culture. You just get some technocracy kind of thing where everybody's all impressed with their ability to do the next Scrum or the next this or that. And they come back from these things like DevOps meetings and something, and they sing Kumbaya, and they think everything's going to be better. No, they've learned a skill, but they don't have the values to support it. So you don't get the reliable culture you need. On the other hand, if you have great values, but you don't have the skills to support it, you don't get the competent culture you're supposed to have. And so no one wants zealousness and we're going to do great things at this company without the skills and the values fully integrating, because it creates chaos. One of our colleagues, who is a worldwide expert on quality function deployment, Dr. Kim Stansfield, and he's right there in London area. He's in our systems engineering quality management working group at INCOSI, and he said this to me one day. He said, for 30 years, and the companies that he's worked with and the projects and government other, he said, it's an amazing CV that he has. He said, for 30 years, we've been trying to solve problems with technologies and with technological advancements and tightened procedures and processes and seminars. He said, it's the people, stupid. We're not supporting the people. We're not expecting values to be expressed in our work culture that will support quality. And so your subject matter expertise, as you can see in this chart, is at the center of this. If you're going to be on a project and we want you to interface with our processes and develop a product or service for a customer or a constituency, we want to make sure that your subject matter expertise lines up with it, that your vocational certainty lines up with it. But if you have that and you don't have these other things, the values and skills that make a quality culture, what it should be, you'll find yourself digressing into counting errors and counting defects and scrambling around to fix them. And so if you've experienced that, it always tracks back to the quality culture. And so in a QMI complete quality management culture, what we say is that the right values and skills and letting people grow into these values and skills, accept them principally, get the chance to consider them. Somebody just clicked in the thing here, to consider them as important and part of what they need to do, you get the kind of continuous improvement everybody wants. It's incremental and continuous. And you constantly have a culture that, even though it might have turnover, is growing more in its strength of its values, more in its strength of his skills, and so on and so forth. And you get all of these wonderful outcomes that a number of different studies have proven, and that is everything from delighted customers to a self-correcting culture. And a self-correcting culture doesn't need a lot of authoritative intervention because it self-corrects, first at the individual, then the working group, and so on and so forth. So these are things that we're doing this on the shoulders and on leveraging from Crosby, Deming, Duran, and a number of other people, Cow, and so on. But we think that this curriculum that we've provided will provide you an opportunity to kind of reach those ideals and experience those kinds of work lives that you really want. It's not enough just to make a good salary. It's not enough just to be able to pay for the things you want in life. There's a deep need among most people to know that what they're doing has some value and that you're connected with a few individuals or a large team that shares those values, has the skills that are required to fill out the continuum so that you can be successful. One last thought on the culture of the work culture and its relationship to these quality values, and back to the educational concepts and how this course works. We are using Bloom's taxonomy. You can look this up, but what we're looking for is, first of all, that you capture the facts, that you recognize and recall the facts. And we test that. We measure that by giving you an exam. We have several exams, as a matter of fact. For each module, you take an exam. So we want you to practice understanding what the facts mean and applying them. And that's why we have the discussion groups, and you can progress through the hierarchy of what learning is supposed to be and move to the place where you can actually analyze and evaluate what's going on, because you've had all these discussions. You know you're working with facts that are reliable, and get to the creative side. Sometimes I've been asked, what do you think about the current assessment methodologies? And I think they're wonderful in that now educational leadership will ask you, how did this training make you feel? How did it change your perceptions or your viewpoint of life or your workspace or so on and so forth? And I think that's a great thing, but frankly, I don't care how it makes you feel till I know you know the facts and you've captured the curriculum, you've captured the fundamentals, the values and the principles and the skills, because then your opinion about how it makes you feel has tremendous value. But if you just are wandering through the course and wandering through your major at a university and just waiting to get that and go get a job, and you really aren't acquiring the kinds of discipline and use of knowledge that is required when you get to the workplace, then you find yourself in a place where your opinion doesn't have weight or gravitas, as they say. I was watching a film recently, and this will be my last comment, and I'll turn it back to everyone for questions and what have you. I was watching a video of an industrial psychologist, and he was talking to a young person. In fact, the class said they were speaking to a young group of millennials, and there's a lot of bad press on millennials. I find that millennials, people in that age group, and the Z's coming afterwards, and the ones before, but particularly the millennials, if you can talk to them, you'll find out that they're sort of cynical about some things, like we were in my age when I was coming through college a million years ago. And if you can connect with them on values, they are highly motivated. They want to do good things. So this, this industrial psychologist was talking to this young man who was in this business, and he says, "I'm really depressed." And he said, "Why?" He said, "Are you unhappy with your workplace?" He said, "Well, sort of. I was drawn to it. It really fits, what I've trained to do." And we would say his vocational certainty was pretty well targeted. And he said, I really like the people that I'm working with, but he says, I just find that I'm not progressing up the ladder and having an influence on the corporation like I want. He said, I've tried really, really hard, and I've written documents and I've participated in meetings and stuff, but I just don't find that my career path is moving up as quickly and as effectively as I think it should be. And the psychologist says, "Well, how long have you been at this company?" He said, "Well, 5 months." Well, the whole room cracked up laughing, because at some point, if you haven't been forced to go through this discipline of learning and this discipline of applying and working your way through, you make really strange evaluations. And so he had looked at his situation through a straw and wasn't realizing how out of step he was, not only with the corporate environment, but with all of his colleagues. And so these are things that we've taken into consideration, that we're not working in perfect workplaces. We don't work in a quality culture that works exactly like it should, but it prepares the learner who goes through our course and gets the ITQM certification to be very effective as an individual, to broaden that influence to his colleagues, those places that he or she has authority or influence, and to eventually move their way forward in their career and be successful to various levels. Who knows? You may be the next Joseph Duran or W. Edwards Deming. We never know. But what we really do want to know is, can I produce? Can I be effective at the optimum for myself and for my family and for my career path? So that's it. And I'll leave it back to the chair for discussion and any questions you might want to ask with the remainder of the time.
Thank you, Larry. And